Welcome to Amaroo Park, and we're only minutes away from the start of this year's Castrol 6-hour Endurance Classic for production motorbikes. As you can see from some of the grey clouds around me, we have had some light rain here at Amaroo Park, and it could have a very important bearing on this race over the next 6 hours. In fact, it could make the first few laps extremely dangerous, as well as making them very exciting. Even before the start, the fact that it has rained has had a very vital effect on this year's race. It's caused the pole position team of Dennis Neal and Roger Hayes to change their whole race strategy. Dennis Neal was fastest qualifier yesterday. Today, he's elected to allow Roger Hayes to go out and ride the first stint, hoping that Dennis Neal later in the race can make up the time. Well, what more can I say, except the tension here is absolutely electric, the excitement unbelievable. The tension in the pits is as thick as an LA fog. There's been plenty of pre-race drama, and Will Hagan and John Smales are going to relate it all to you throughout the next 6 hours of this year's Castrol.
Wretched weather at Amaroo Park for the start of the 11th Castrol 6-hour. Rain has been falling for about the last hour and a half, but only very light rain, not heavy enough to clear oil and tyre rubber from the track, which of course hasn't had much rain in the past few months, although it did rain very briefly but quite heavily 1 week ago, but very few riders practiced at that stage. Rain, however, at the moment clearing, and a big crowd here to Amaroo Park to see the 11th Castrol and the clash of Honda and Suzuki. This is what the 1.94 kilometres of Amaroo Park looks like from the air. Settled in a little valley in Annangrove, we see firstly Bitupave Hill as the riders go up the hill. Very sparse, of course, at the moment through the lack of rain, but a very difficult circuit up the top of the hill there, Dunlop Loop, and the riders, as you see, the track starts to fall down to Mazda, accelerating hard, then to Honda corner. Now we're on the level again. A hard, flat run up to Winfield and very heavy braking there. Out of there to that fast right-hander, Breville corner, round to the straight, and it's 1.94 kilometres, which yesterday by the fastest rider was done in 56.13 seconds.
And let's go for a lap now of the tight twisting Amaroo Park circuit with Alan Hales, winner of the Castrol 6-hour in 1979 and the current outright lap record holder here at 56.6 seconds. Down to second gear for Honda corner. The foot pegs just scraping the ground. Full acceleration now, out. And down to Winfield corner, the stop corner, where again it's back to second gear. Hard brakes there, right over. His knee just scraping the ground. Up to third for Breville corner. And onto the main straight. Fourth gear. As fast as the bike will go, 200 kilometres an hour up this hill, and into Bitupave Hill. Back to third, down into the loop.
This is the scene for the most tense start ever in a Castrol 6-hour race, with rain falling. Riders lined up, but virtually none of them have done any practice here on these bikes in the rain. And there you see the 10 grid positions, and it is very much a Honda-Suzuki battle with 6 Hondas, 3 Suzukis and 1 lone Yamaha in the top 10. The managing director of Castrol Australia, Mr. Bill Orme, ready to raise the flag, which will start the race, and they're away. This is Roger Hayes running on the pole position bike, which was put there by Dennis Neal. Circuit treacherous, not enough rain to clean it, but everybody clear off the grid, as you can see. 6 hours to go.
Rubber laid on the circuit.
Wayne Gardner, a noted master wet weather rider, followed by Hayes, followed then on 1 by John Pace, who's been riding in England a lot in the rain.
And that's the Yamaha Bike 3 of Len Attlee and Stephen Gall that's blowing all that smoke. So already problems for one of the lead competitors in the Castrol 6-hour motorcycle race.
But Gardner sprinting. The Wollongong boy who had his 21st birthday only a couple of weeks ago. Look at the lead he's pulling out already. On the bike prepared by Peter Malloy, the master tuner who's been behind so many car race drivers over the years, and who already is running away from 1, John Pace, from 4, Roger Hayes, from 15, Malcolm Campbell, 6, David Hiscock, the New Zealander. Everybody being very cautious and trying to establish the conditions. 17 is next in behind them, and that is the Rodney Brown Len Willing 750 Kawasaki.
And look at the smoke coming from that Yamaha XS 1100.
It's only Pace, another young rider, the Australian who went overseas after winning the Australian 350 title last year and has done so well in England, a resounding victory over a top-class international field at Donington earlier in the year, and some tremendous performances there, and such an unassuming sort of a guy too. He's the outright lap record holder here, in fact, on a 350 race Yamaha at 54.6 seconds.
While the rain is holding off at the moment, riders are at the moment trying to clear a dry patch on the track, but you can see the water coming from the back of the bike, and it started to rain again at that side of the circuit and is now moving towards the main straight.
And Pace goes into the lead. And Pace said this morning, I said, have you been doing much riding in the rain in England? He said, it's rained almost every practice session while I've been over there. And look at the way he's handling it, and Wayne Gardner too. So Suzuki won, Honda in second place, Hiscock third, Malcolm Campbell fourth, both of those Suzukis. This is tremendous stuff, watching these two dealing with the most treacherous conditions on motorbikes that in the dry can spin the rear wheel when they're cranked over in first, second or third gear at anything up to 160 kilometres an hour. And here they are in the rain with it, far more slippery than that.
Gardner, for all his reputation in the wet, has never ridden a production bike on production motorcycle tyres in wet weather before. So a superb job that he's doing out there to stay with the more experienced John Pace, who's just slipping and sliding a little bit there as he heads down into Winfield Corner.
Their lead over David Hiscock is 7.83 seconds after 2 laps. We'll get a lap time on them. Pace relishing in the conditions, starting to feel it out as a rider must, and to experiment to see just where his pitch lies and how far can he go.
He comes through his first spot.
Hiscock moving away from the bunch behind to establish a very solid third place at this stage, and to send Pace after them. Fourth place is the 750 Kawasaki being ridden by Rodney Brown and Len Willing, bike number 17. It's a great battle for fourth place in the early laps of the 6 hour, with number 10 Rob Phillips, another wet weather runner from Albury, doing a tremendous job on a Suzuki 1100 in front of Neville Hiscock, Dave Hiscock's young brother, on 28 the 750 class bike. In behind them Alan Decker on another of the Honda 1100s that he's sharing with Michael Cole, and they in turn have all blasted past the early leader of this bunch, Rodney Brown, the Queenslander, sharing with Len Willing on the 750 Kawasaki number 17.
The 750cc bikes, of course, able to do it a little easier in the wet. They can get more of their power to the ground because they're a much more upright sort of motorcycle, whereas the 1100s really have to be flung about.
And the riders now dealing with very much wetter conditions than when the race started. Rain falling quite steadily, which frankly they'd almost probably prefer, in the sense that at least will wash the track clean. But if the rain stops, we're going to have a whole new motorcycle race, because suddenly, as these people have a tremendous scrap, you can see coming into the battle there the South African pair of David Wally, Rod Gray on the Honda 1100 number 9. But if it dries, suddenly people like Dennis Neal, who doesn't like the rain, will go desperately fast.
The Hondas have had to change their whole race tactics because of this rain. They had intended, using their superior power, to establish a very early lead in the event and then let the Suzukis catch them. Now, because the rain is preventing them putting their power to the ground, they've put their slower, I guess the word is, riders on the machines, the riders more likely to treat the bikes with care and attention, and they're going for a waiting game, hoping that the rain will clear so then they can put their power down.
And while Pace edges and feels his way around up front, doing such a tremendous job, he's still doing around the 66-second time, even in the heavier rain, and that's an average speed of about 102 kilometres an hour. Up the hill goes the race leader on bike number 1, John Pace, doing a tremendous job and having a hard dice as he threads through traffic with Wayne Gardner. There he is, the race leader trying to find his way through traffic, being haunted by Wayne Gardner on bike number 5. I said to Peter Malloy this morning, who admires the ability of young Wayne Gardner enormously in the rain, I said, I didn't realise you got on so well with the people upstairs. He said, Huey's been looking after me and doing a tremendous job.
Suzuki in the lead, Honda in second place, the laps tumbling even because of the wet weather. Down to 68 seconds a lap now from 69s, which he was performing earlier. So John Pace really opening up now, trying to get some sort of advantage on that Honda that must be worrying him in these treacherous conditions. Pace keeping the bike upright there as he comes through the stock corner. Normally his knee would be scraping the ground there, so you can see just how gingerly he's driving that bike.
Well, Haslam Blake, we just caught a glimpse of them on 2. Close to when we looked at Hay. Yes, there they are.
About to be lapped. About to be lapped.
We'll get the leader coming.
They're about to be lapped, David.
We'll get the leader coming through on the bunch when they come up top. Yes. Tremendous traffic and difficult conditions at the top of the hill, with the race leader John Pace on number 1 coming up to lap the English international Ron Haslam on bike number 8. Look at the traffic there. There's Haslam and young John Pace, 4 years his junior and with much less international experience, coming up to lap him after only 12 laps, and therefore to have picked up about 5 seconds a lap.
And he's now through. That's Ken Blake on the bike, and Blake must be so disappointed to be seeing the race leader get away from him just so easily.
And in fact, as many of the teams commented this morning when the race started to fall, they said, well, that's the end of the week's testing. We could have done without it, because now it's a whole different ball game and something of a game of chance. And the incredible thing, of course, is that there has not yet been one fall under these treacherous conditions.
Wayne Gardner now comes up to take Blake as well.
Years ago, Ken Blake was making 4 seconds a lap on a BMW on the rest of the field in a race in which he finished second here. And he pulled up 7 places during that time. But in the meantime, Ken's got a little older, and there's some remarkably good young guys like Wayne Gardner there going through on him. Watch 2 masters, an older one and a younger one, as they go down through this sweeping section of circuit, which would be taken in 3rd gear in the rain.
Blake, a winner of 3 Castrol 6 hours, must have decided that his tactics will be that he will ride a waiting game and not take risks in the opening laps. But at the same stage, he must be wondering right now if his decision is the right one, because no one's falling, and already Kenny Blake has been lapped.
Up the hill goes the new race leader, Wayne Gardner, bike number 5, Honda 1100, taking over the lead from John Pace riding the Suzuki number 1. 26 laps completed as he comes to the top of the hill. And this is probably the most difficult bike in the race to ride in the rain. 115 horsepower going through the rear wheel of that bike, and it comes on in pretty snappy fashion, around 5,000 revs, and getting up to 6, it is really punching. And that bike absolutely leaps. In 5th gear, a top speed of 262 kilometres an hour. That's 163 miles an hour in the form that it's racing here. But the riders will be very lucky. Well, they certainly won't get into 5th and will use 4th even less than they would have used it in the drive, but still doing speeds of around 170 kilometres an hour up the straight. But a far less progressive bike, and one with the less power down low. So that Wayne Gardner is doing a tremendous job, and that gives you an idea of what he's coping with and how well he's doing it.
He's starting to get his security gap too. He's opened 4 seconds on John Pace since he passed him, and that is just enough to let him take a little bit of an ease off, because he's got a clear track now, and he doesn't have the heat of that big Suzuki hanging right on top of him. So traffic certainly has helped Wayne Gardner.
And the reason he's done that is that he has dropped his lap times to 64 seconds, and you can see there that bike working and sliding, and Gardner masterfully controlling it. Only 8 seconds outside the best dry weather times. New Zealander on the GSX Suzuki. Fourth fastest qualifier in the hands of Alan Hales, who nominated not to ride when he saw the wet conditions, sending this very talented 27-year-old New Zealander out to do the first stint. Hiscock has not been beaten in an endurance production race since last year's Castrol 6 Hour. He's won 2 of them in New Zealand, and he's won in Perth, Adelaide, Melbourne and Brisbane since then, or Surfers Paradise. And they entered the race initially certainly as race favourites, but qualifying yesterday nearly 7/10 of a second slower than Dennis Neal on his Honda raised doubts as to whether they would be as fast. And there's the race leader coming up to lap him in just a moment, Gardner. Hiscock doing a good job. He was running 3rd in the opening laps, but has now fallen to 7th place. But nevertheless, he's keeping it together, and with a definite possibility of rain perhaps clearing during this race. As we said earlier, it's going to be a new motorcycle race if it does, because suddenly everybody else, the ones that don't like the rain, will have a go. People like Dennis Neal on 4.
And there goes Gardner on the inside, just taking 2 bikes so easily, and now right on the tail of Dave Hiscock. Let's see how easy Hiscock makes it for Wayne Gardner.
He would be doing 130, 140 kilometres an hour there, Gardner, as he slipped underneath Hiscock with such nonchalant ease, it looked ridiculous.
And there goes Scott Stevens, the young Tasmanian, also under Hiscock. So Hiscock's certainly taking it very easily in this Castrol 6 Hour, more easily than we would have expected. There goes Hiscock back in front of the other bike again.
Stevens on 14, a very talented 20-year-old who on superbikes has been rattling people with a gigantic reputation and achievement. People like Andrew Johnson and Dennis Neal. And there he is, in behind David Hiscock. Never ridden at Amaroo, and when he rode here earlier in the week, he said, I'm not too sure that I want to come back to it, because it's a very twisty circuit where riders never, ever get a rest, and so much of the circuit is blind. They're blind over the top here. They can't see if there's a problem, or what the conditions are at the exit of the corner. They're blind into the loop. They're blind on their right-hander out of it. There you see Scott Stevens on 14, walking away from David Hiscock on 6, who has fallen from 3rd to 7th.
Well, with me at the moment, the man who gained pole position yesterday in final qualifying, Dennis Neal. At the moment, though, Dennis, you're lying in about 10th position after nearly 50 laps of the race. Do you feel your change in strategy was a correct one?
Well, lying 10th is better than laying on the ground. And I've got a bit of a bad record in the wet, and I think we've done the right thing. It's looking like it might possibly fine up, and if the track does dry out, I can pick the time up, I'm sure.
The story of the rain-soaked Castrol 6 Hour. In 3rd position outright, bike 32, Vince Sharp on a Honda CB750, is about 45 seconds behind the race leader Wayne Gardner on the Honda. And there's the race board that gives us position at lap 50 of the Castrol 6 Hour. In position 1, bike 5, Wayne Gardner, Honda CB1100. From bike 1, John Pace, Suzuki GSX 1100. Then comes bike 32, Vince Sharp, Honda CB750, followed by bike 8, Michael Cole on the Honda CB1100R. Then bike 7, the second of the 750s, Jim Budd on the Kawasaki 750. From bike 10, Rob Phillis, Suzuki GSX 1100. Then comes bike 18, that's Steve Trinder with the South African champion, Dave Peterson on another 750, a Suzuki. Then bike 9, the other South Africans, Dave Woolley and Rob Gray on a Honda CB1100. Bike 28, Glenn Taylor and Neville Hiscock, Dave Hiscock's brother, on a Suzuki GSX 750. And then bike 6, David Hiscock himself, co-riding with Alan Hales on the Suzuki GSX 1100.
Into the pits comes David Hiscock, bike number 6, falling back from 3rd in the opening lap to 10th place outright at the end of exactly 1 hour of racing. In he comes.
He's going to take fuel, he's opened his tank. But why now to now? There must be something wrong to be pulled in.
And the first major stop of the event, Alan Hales, the winner of last year's Castrol on the Suzuki GSX 1100. He's out. And off the bike, Dave Hiscock. I'll just see if I can get in here and get a word with Dave about the conditions out there on the track. At the moment, he's talking to his team manager. Hales, in the meantime, is back out on the road. Dave Hiscock, a very hard first hour out on the bike. If I can just get a word with him now. Miles, can I just have a word with Dave, please? Dave, it's been a very, very tough first hour, I'd imagine. Tell us about it.
Cold and wet. Yeah, it's very cold and wet. I can hardly move on the bike at the moment. It's really bad. The riders are getting a tough time out there.
What's the physical endurance you mean of staying on the bike and concentrating at such a hard level?
It's just very hard to see in that rain and your visor and things. It's very hard to see where you're going. There's a lot of mud getting washed out over onto the track and things.
Is it very frightening out there at the moment?
No, it's not too bad. It's not too bad.
Right, well, Dave Hiscock, the first of the major riders, back in for the event, and Alan Hales, last year's defending champion, back out on the track for the Suzukis.
And there he is, the cat amongst the pigeons, Alan Hales. As I said, he's warm, he's dry, and he's angry. And he's going to crack that Suzuki GSX 1100 wide open in an attempt to make up the deficit that he now has on the lead rider. He is the only bike on the track who is warm and dry. Every other rider out there must be cold, their bones aching, their hands unable to work properly on the controls.
Well, bike number 2, the Ken Blake Ron Haslam CB 1100R Honda, running a fair way back in the field. When it's surprising when you consider that Ken Blake has won this event 3 times. So I'll just ask Ron, while he's with me here, whether or not that is a team strategy, or Ron, whether or not there's something wrong.
No, there's nothing wrong. Says at the beginning of the race we're going to take it easy, and after the halfway stage then we'll start to make a move.
Well, you must find these conditions a little bit frightening, because you haven't done a lot of production bike racing and you're going to have to go out there and try and make up some time.
Yeah, one advantage again, for me is I like the wet, so back home like ride it 50% of the time, so I'm a bit used to the wet.
And that's the bike, of course, that Haslam will be on shortly when they make their pit stop. Being ridden at the moment by Ken Blake. But a long way down, well outside the top 10. And something there perhaps affecting the performance of the bike. The Rodney Brown bike number 17. He's into the pits, so a problem here for Ken Blake on bike number 2. No, not into the pits, but what's the problem? Let's see if he signals to the pit crew.
Yes, he did. He's pointing to the back of the bike. Maybe it's the tyres.
He couldn't obviously have worn the tyres, so there's something curious happened, and that was one of the highly favoured teams, because they qualified very well yesterday, 6th fastest, remembering that Haslam has never been to the circuit before, and the 2 riders were very even on times. Right out onto the curbing there is Ken Blake, and he's, I think, just sitting there at the moment.
The bike during the week was found to have a defective frame. They replaced the frame on the motorcycle. I wonder if that may be a problem. Maybe something is just not locating well in the rear end. That's more logical an answer than the tyres themselves at this stage.
Oh, fall out of Honda corner, and it's number 30, one of the outright class bikes, the Tasmanian team of Rob Scolyer, Craig Bye. The second pair only to be down.
And that is quite incredible that with the sort of rain that we've had here at Amaroo Park today, that Craig Bye could stay up so long. That anyone can stay up so long in these conditions. That's Craig Bye, the rider of that bike, the number 2 rider on the motorcycle. Let's see it. Oh, a big fall there. He obviously lost it under brakes. The front end scrubbed away. And there's Craig Bye.
And Hayes looking over his shoulder, quite aware of what was going on behind him.
Craig gets up and says bye-bye to that track, because he's got to get out of there. And there's Scott Stevens, the young Tasmanian, who's also been down. He's up in the loop. So that's 2 falls on lap 64 of the Castrol 6 hour. There goes bike 4. That's Roger Hayes, who had pole position time yesterday, and now coming into the pits to hand over to Dennis Neal. Dennis there in his full wet weather gear, and Roger Hayes.
One of the worries with this team was that Hayes was slower in the dry than Neal, and significantly so.
Bike number 4, the Roger Hayes Dennis Neal bike. Dennis Neal out on bike number 4, Roger Hayes in and off the bike, who've been out on the course now for 65 laps. I'm just about to ask Roger Hayes how he found that first hour and 5 minutes. Roger, you're certainly back in the field to what you expected. Do you feel that the conditions are running against you?
Yes, well, neither myself or Dennis are wet weather riders. Neither of us like the rain. If it had been dry, I don't think you would have seen which way we went. But we knew if it rained, this is exactly what was going to happen.
Is there going to be any change in strategy at all from your point of view?
No, just keep on going as best we can.
So the best thing you can hope for now is to stay up and finish the race?
Yeah, if it dries up, we might have a go later on.
And there we are. That's the race for the lead in this Castrol 6 Hour. Bike 5, Wayne Gardner in the lead. Bike 1, John Pace on the Suzuki GSX 1100, sneaking underneath him. And this heat is right back on again. After being this close very early in the event, with 1 hour 20 minutes of the Castrol 6 Hour now gone, they're back together again, and there's no stopping either of these young chargers. About 15 minutes remaining before both of them need a pit stop. Gardner in the lead. Oh, almost sideways there. He's certainly trying terribly, terribly hard.
Right, Andrew Johnson, you did in fact drop your bike down in Melbourne in this wet weather. Have you got any misgivings about going out in these sort of conditions?
Yes, unfortunately I tried to open up a lead too quick in the wet down at Calder. It wasn't wet, it was just a film of water. Here it's wet, it's still a lot treacherous, very treacherous indeed. Wayne's doing an excellent job. I'll just have to try and maintain the pace and hope that everything goes okay.
Well, Wayne Gardner is probably one of the best wet weather riders in Australia, isn't he?
Yes, he would. He's experienced in short circuit riding, gives him that.
You must be very happy with your position at this stage of the race under these trying conditions.
Yes, we are very happy. Everything's going to plan, but as I said, you know, 6 hours is a long time. Anything can happen, even 5 minutes to the end. We're just keeping our fingers crossed.
Into the pits comes Ken Blake, 3 times winner of the Castrol 6 Hour, and in the last 8 years, no worse than 8 outright. A tremendous record, perhaps the king of the Castrol 6 Hour. And coming in, we think, for a tyre change and probably to hand over to Ron Haslam, the 24-year-old Englishman from Nottinghamshire.
Ken Blake on bike number 2, the second of the Team Hondas in. Kenny Blake looking still rather cool under these conditions. He's a very experienced rider. There's some very close discussions going on among the Team Honda crew. They've had a look at that back tyre. They've got a tyre ready for a change. They've elected not to change the tyre, and Ron Haslam, Rocket Ron as they call him in England, is out on the circuit.
And his welcome to the track is that it's raining heavily again. It looks as though we just may have a completely wet Castrol 6 Hour. The weather keeps threatening to lift, but then coming back in again. And there's overall cloud cover as Haslam, for the first time, tackles Amaroo Park in the wet. He's never raced before on a stock production bike, and he's never raced before on treaded tyres, and he's never been at Amaroo Park in the rain. A fairly nasty set of conditions for Haslam to try and come to grips with. But Haslam, as his Formula One Honda UK team manager, Barry Simmons says, knows only 2 speeds. He really is a hard charger that never backs off. We can see tucked in behind him, 7th placed bike number 10 going past, in fact, Rob Phillis, sharing that Suzuki 1100 with Graham Muir, the 25-year-old Victorian.
Haslam, the third of the rocket riders to be sent out now in the wet conditions. Dennis Neal and Alan Hales are both out there. Interestingly, Dennis Neal cannot match Alan Hales' flashing time. Hales is down in the 66-second laps consistently. Neal is struggling to do 68s. But there's Haslam.
Very wisely letting the bike number 10 go by, but it'd be interesting to see if in a couple of laps' time, when he's settled in and whether he's worked out what the adhesion's like at the various points, whether he can have a crack at it. 74 laps completed as Haslam, for 73 as he rejoined the race. Probably the only good bit of news as far as the riders are concerned in today's race is that unlike a lot of races which are finished on distance, at least they're not going to endure the horrors of this slippery track for any longer than the 6 hours, because it's going to finish then, and obviously will be a very short race distance this year compared to the 360 laps, a lap a minute, that was averaged last year by Hales Chivers.
Second place, John Pace just laps Ron Haslam and sprints away. Haslam uses more of the track, and there's bike 5 coming up to get him. Bike 5, of course, the leader, Wayne Gardner, on the Honda CB 1100.
Well, Kenny Blake, you're keeping your helmet on to stay warm. It must have been freezing out there.
Well, it's not that cold really. With the amount of anxiety I had, it kept me warm. You know, I don't quite understand what the problem is at the moment, but I just can't stop sliding. It's understeering, oversteering, hanging the back out. I really don't know what it is.
Well, of course, you look at the obvious things like the surface and the tyres, but is there anything else?
Yeah, well, I don't know. I usually go fairly well in the rain. You know, I always have done in the past. It's I really can't put my finger on it. I'll have to wait and see what Ron does on this stint. You know, he'll probably go fast and make me look like a fool.
Well, he was telling us beforehand that he's a very experienced rider in the wet, and if you can work out what that problem is, can we look forward to you making a fairly strong challenge in the next half of the race?
Well, I don't know. I saw a couple of riders twice in that session, so we'll have to pull our finger out.
News from the pits is that Pace is just starting to slow down, that the rain and the cold are really starting to get to him because he's now been lapped by Wayne Gardner. And here you see Pace try to keep himself on the wheel of Wayne Gardner, having a hair in front of him so that he can go out after it to keep his concentration up and keep his mind off the agony that must be going through his bones with the wet leathers that he's wearing at the moment. But even there, you see, in that short distance, Pace is dropping back from Wayne Gardner. He just can't match the flying Honda rider.
They've been out there for an hour and a half. They're due for a pit stop probably within 10 or 15 minutes. There's Dennis Neal saying, Wayne Gardner, if you want to go through, boy, you're a better man than I am under these conditions. Dennis Neal, the man that said this morning he's got such a reputation to live up to in the wet, he might even bring himself undone, but we've seen just how superbly he's going. As we see there, the bike of the South African pair, number 9, David Wally, Rod Gray, the Guslu Honda 1100. And into the pits was the 750 class leader, number 32, and the bike lying third outright. That's Vince Sharp, Glenn Williams, who've done such a tremendous job. Came from back in the class to claim the class lead, and a fall down at Winfield Corner. But they claimed the class lead and worked their way up to third outright. And into the pits comes the race leader, Wayne Gardner, bike number 5.
Race leader into the pits, race leader into the pits.
And there it is, Ron Haslam's off on 2, and 34, Terry Turner, David Burley, the other Guslu Honda 1100 also down.
Haslam having difficulty holding the bike up there, so there's maybe some front end damage to it.
That's the other rider, there's Haslam, he wants to get back into it.
Meantime, Wayne Gardner and Andrew Johnson shoot out of the pits, so the race leader has had his first pit stop, as Ron Haslam, with the 2 on the front of his bike, all disarrayed, with the handlebars all out of shape, looks very disappointed. You can see the scrapes down the side of the machine, and I'd say that's the end of Rocket Ron Haslam in this year's Castrol 6-hour motorcycle race.
Well, Ken Blake's forecast of Haslam going faster and making Blake look a fool certainly hasn't come to fruition, because Kenny Blake, with the bike obviously suspect, as he told us, has coped well with the problem, but Haslam slipped up.
Terry Turner there seeking advice or help from the officials. He's got an injury to his right leg of some sort or other when he came off his big Honda. It would be terrible to have one of those big bikes land on top of you. It'd be a huge weight to come down on top of your leg.
That's 2 of the 9 229 kilogram Honda 1100s out of the race in one fell swoop. Into the pits, Haslam. rides for the Faro team in England and Honda in Formula One and Superbikes, was the 1979 World Formula One champion, the title that Graham Crosby won from him this year in a hard season of
the riding
racing.
suit is very badly scuffed around the right hand. Alternating cover on the right hand. Right, move back.
The bike damage.
Big critic going out on the Trevina Honda.
There you see the alternator cover on the right side, badly damaged, and the bike could probably be got out again.
Have we got any sound here?
Are gone.
There's Rocket Ron Haslam looking so disappointed, talking to Barry Simmons. There goes Kenny Blake running back in. So Blake had gone up to assist Ron Haslam, got halfway around only to see Haslam ride past him, leaving him, of course, without a pillion seat on the Honda, with no way of getting back to the pits except running. But there's the mud all over the side of that bike. What a disappointment for Rocket Ron.
Blake, a great long-distance rider, had a lap and a half lead in a 1,000-kilometre race at Misano this year when his teammate Louis Chemerin fell, hit a curbing with a lapsing concentration with only half an hour to go, and fell and lost a tremendous victory. And there's an embarrassed young man, Ron Haslam, a professional motorcycle racer, who, let's face it, his job is to bring home the booty. Just a little bit of a tear on his wet weather gear over his leathers, but he knows that on this occasion he's failed.
After their first pit stop, the bike 5 of Wayne Gardner and Andrew Johnson is still in the lead. Their pit stop took about 25 seconds, and the very interesting point was that Wayne Gardner, after riding in the rain for so long, elected to remain on the motorcycle. He's running hot, so team manager Peter Malloy has left him on it and left Andrew Johnson, who had some misgivings about riding in the rain, back in the pits. So Wayne Gardner, a superhuman effort to go out for a second riding stint in these atrocious conditions.
Saw Alan Hales just in front of him on bike number 6, and he's retained his lead despite the pit stop. There was Hales going through, the BMW number 21 behind, but he retains his lead over John Pace on the Suzuki number 1, 2 laps in front of the 750 Honda, which still is third. That's number 32. On the same number of laps is bike number 18 in 4th place, and that's Stephen Trinder, David Peterson, Suzuki 750, running second in the 750 class, and then Bud now scored 3rd place on his Kawasaki number 7 in the 750 class and 5th outright. That's Bud there on 7, as we look at Hales being caught by Gardner. So the dry weather magic of Alan Hales, the man who threw it away when a lap and a half in front in 1978, won with grim determination last year with Neil Chivers, and has spent 6 months working up to this race, is now being caught and about, I think, to be passed by Wayne Gardner. In the meantime, the South African paired Honda number 9 has gone out again, the sister bike to 34 that had that fall with Ron Haslam over at Winfield Corner a few moments ago.
Hales seemingly fairly easily matching the Gardner pace at this stage. No real move by Wayne Gardner to get through him. He will eventually, I would think. But at the moment, Hales certainly holding the Gardner challenge. Mind you, several laps down. As they go down into the stop Winfield Corner. Hales takes more of the track than does Gardner, and that helps Gardner catch up, because Gardner is being particularly neat in these wet weather conditions, using less of the track than anyone else, keeping the bike more upright, and therefore getting more power to the ground.
And holding a 42-second lead over second place Pace.
Well, we've seen them in the pits here on bike number 2 for at least 2 or 3 minutes now, and the damage looks to be only superficial, although it may look a little bit worse than what it actually is in terms of what the pictures are throwing up. The damage really has been only superficial. They've changed the alternator cover and replaced one of the brakes, and Ron Haslam, the man who said he was the most experienced, or is very experienced in wet weather, is going to go back out on the Honda. Kenny Blake at one stage looked like was going to go out, but Haslam has put his helmet back on, and he looks like going back out for Team Honda on bike 2.
Second place, John Pace, flying around the circuit on a gap of 38.47 seconds from himself to the race leader, Wayne Gardner. And the story is that In the past 3 laps, he's not... See, there's a rider's gone off up at the top of the hill, gone right out into the boondocks, just held on to the bike there. He kept it upright on the dirt as we watched John Pace go through on 1, but that bike ran right out into the dirt. Pace, in the meantime, 4 laps ago was 42 seconds in arrears to Gardner. He brought it back to 38 seconds in 1 lap. Then 36.4, and it's now stretched back to 38.7. So we'll have a look and see what lap time he's doing.
Gardner, meantime, has just done a 67.4 second lap, so it will be interesting to compare first and second places. Gardner, of course, is out for his second riding stint. Maybe it may be a question of Gardner slowing down rather than Pace speeding up to any great degree.
And we hear that Pace has dropped just another few tenths as the message of his trying has got through to the Peter Malloy pit and to Wayne Gardner, so that the gap is now 39.1. But here's the lap time coming up. There it is, 69.9.
Compared to a 67.4 on Wayne Gardner, so Wayne Gardner well in command of the Castrol 6 Hour.
So out onto the circuit again comes the Ron Haslam Ken Blake bike. Ron Haslam,
right,
hopefully going further than the few laps that he did before he fell, and of course with that change of tactic or a new front tyre, going to a Metzeler instead of the Pirelli that was previously fitted, already with a Metzeler on the rear.
Working on the principle that you should always get back on the horse that threw you, Haslam now is going to be pretty savage with it, perhaps, I would think, because Haslam is not a man. He's not a man to take a fall easily. He's a professional rider, and he's just lost a lot of face. And he lost a lot more as well, as 2 more bikes go underneath him as he feels out the new tyres. And this time perhaps we might see him take it easy for the first few laps before he gets down to some sort of a regular rhythm. Hard to establish a rhythm on this wet track because the conditions change lap to lap, so there is no way that you can work down to a nice, smooth, flowing action as you wend your way around the tight, twisting 1.9 kilometre track.
This is where he fell.
Just
as he looped into the corner here, and where the bike kicks up and gets very light under power, he's got there the John Pace bike number 1 that Neil Chivers must surely take over soon. Haslam out on this purpose-built bike, a bike that Honda UK have produced in limited quantities, 1,000 of them for the world, 110 of them to Australia, and very much purpose-built for racing. Single-seat bike, as you can see. This is as it's delivered, with the red frame and the fiberglassing at the rear. That's an aluminium fuel tank at the front, handmade, and 26 litres, the biggest tank of the bikes in the race. Enormous ground clearance so that it can be banked over 50 degrees before anything touches, and in fact it's impossible to make anything touch because the bike can be taken over so far as we see bike 10 go underneath. That's in 4th place outright and being ridden at the moment by Rob Phillips, the rider from Albury. But the Hondas can be banked over so far that they actually come off the tread of the tyre, and so that's the limiting factor, not the ground clearance of the bike, as in the case with other production machines.
Certainly today it's not the limiting factor because no one's getting over that far, as Haslam now is being challenged by Jim Budd, who at the moment is leading the 750cc class again. Budd, in fact, is handed over to Paul Cawthorne, so it's Cawthorne on the Kawasaki.
With the Honda number 32 that had been leading, the Vince Sharp bike, dropping from 3rd back to 7th with their pit stop and rider change. 1 hour 54 minutes now of this 6-hour race. You can see there that it is the Wayne Gardner Honda, the Pace Chivers Suzuki, then the 750 class bike number 18 Trinder. So he's in fact challenging him for 3rd, although no, he's not, because he's 1 lap down to him. In 4th place, another of the Suzuki 1100s, Rob Phillips, Graham Muir on 10. 8 is the Honda of Michael Cole, Alan Decker. 32 is the Vince Sharp, Ben Williams 750 Honda. 7 is the Bud Kawasaki. 6 is the Alan Hales, David Hiscock bike, which is worked up from 13th in the pit stop after Hiscock Road. Hales has got it up to 8th. Then number 3, Len Attlee, Stephen Gall on the McCulloch Yamaha number 3, and that's the only one of that mark in the race. Then the Glenn Taylor Neville Hiscock bike, the Suzuki 750, number 28. So a Castrol 6-hour race being run completely outside the forecasts because of the wet conditions. The race leader, Wayne Gardner, still in the saddle in the second stint, yet to hand over to the physically handicapped Andrew Johnson, the Australian Unlimited champion this year. Johnson's got only very limited movement of his left hand, about 35% strength and movement due to an accident some 8 years ago, but a very talented rider. And of course we've been watching for nearly 2 hours the tremendous talent, particularly in the rain, of Wayne Gardner. But he's no slouch in the dry either, doing a wonderful job on superbikes particularly, and becoming quite an expert in the art of high-speed wheelies.
Quite a risk by team manager Peter Malloy to let young Gardner go out there for 2 sessions at a time, because he must be terribly tired on the bike. Nonetheless, he's 44.6 seconds in front of second place man John Pace at this time.
And Pace is just 2 minutes short now of getting to the 2 hours and potentially cutting the team's stops from 3 to 2. Chivers must be absolutely thrilled, and so too is Andrew Johnson, the co-rider with Gardner.
That's Gary Coleman down for the first time. Coleman pulled into the pits earlier, an unscheduled stop, with his bike really losing its electrics, and he put a lot of dewatering fluid over the machine. Now at the top of the hill, he's crashed the model. So Gary Coleman out on the Yamaha XJ650.
Tremendous work there by John Pace on one as he slips inside a whole gaggle of bikes, but the major one, the Murray Hill Trevor Discom Yamaha 650. Race traffic very thick on occasions.
Back in 1973, a man called Doug Shivers lost the Hardy Ferodo 1000 by running out of petrol in his Holden dealer team Tirana. Sitting in the pits at the moment is Doug Shivers with his son Neil as they watch John Pace playing a very dangerous game, almost ready to run out of petrol himself. He's done the 2-hour mark. He's now 4 minutes over the 2-hour mark. There is no reserve tap on this Suzuki, so the first indication he'll have of when he's out of petrol is when it runs out.
And the interesting thing is that in the Surface 3-hour recently, Chivers lost that race because he had to make an extra pit stop over the Alan Hales David Hiscock bike. And that was the only thing that lost Neil Chivers that last endurance race at Surfers Paradise. So this time things are going right.
So John Pace, winner of the Castrol economy run in the first 2 hours, is now playing a dangerous game on fuel. How long can he remain out there? Obviously what he's trying to do is get up as many laps credit as he can, so if the rain does clear up, perhaps they can eke out another near 2 hours in the next 2 hours and therefore remain with only 2 fuel stops. But it is a particularly dicey game that he's playing.
It's a sensible one. The gap between him and first-placed Gardner on bike 5 is now 46.8 seconds. It's been in that area, within 2 seconds of that now for about 6 laps. He's lapping at 67.9, 10 seconds outside a dry weather time, and doing it well within his very special capabilities, and now has been out 5 minutes past the 2 hours.
Alan Decker on bike 8. Another of the CB 1100Rs in 5th position overall, after Michael Cole has well and truly established them in the top of the contenders after 110 laps.
So up to the top of the hill comes Decker. Michael Cole has had a checkered career in the Castrol 6-hour, which included the incredible frustration when he was sharing a bike a couple of years ago with Dennis Neal of coming into the pits for a wheel change when in second place, and then things just didn't go right, and what should have been about a 1 minute pit stop, perhaps 40 seconds if everything went superbly well, became 4 frustrating, tantalizing minutes. As we watch Stephen Gall come in on the Yamaha 1100, which has come up to 7th place outright. What a great job this motocross specialist has done. Younger brother of Dean Ball, the car race driver.
There's Len Attlee getting ready to get on the bike. Len Attlee won the inaugural Castrol 6 Hour in 1970, won again in 1974, and a model of consistency, he was third outright last year.
And this Castrol, with just over the 100 laps done in at 1/3 distance, 2 hours, looks like it'll be the shortest distance ever covered.
You right for an interview up there?
6 hour, 312 laps done in the first race, which was the fewest number of laps in 1970, and this looks like running around the 300 to 310.
Len Attlee now back out onto the track. Has a good precautionary look behind him. Len Attlee is nobody's fool. Apart from anything else, he runs a rider training school, as he's lapped by Alan Hales. He runs a rider training school here at Amaroo Park, so he knows the way around Amaroo Park, probably better than any rider out there, as the rain starts to clear at Amaroo Park.
In fact, I've done Len Attlee's rider training school, and worse, I've been pillioned around here by Len Attlee on an 1100 Yamaha at about the time, just a little bit quicker than he'll be doing in the rain now. We did 65 seconds for a flying lap, 2 up. A great rider who plans, in fact, to retire after this race.
Steve Gall on the XS 1100 running a fair way back in the field, but welcome back to production bike racing. You mustn't be liking it very much.
Well, it's not too bad. It's like racing a slippery short circuit event. It's not too bad out there. It's pretty predictable. The 1100 is very predictable in the wet. It's just a matter of keeping smooth lines and staying on the bike.
Well, how does this compare to something like a Mr. Motocross event? Is the endurance just as heavy?
Yes, it's very, very hard physically because you must stay in a constant position all the time and you don't move around too much and you get very cramped in the legs, which is what I got then, very cramped in the legs.
What's going to be your running tactics now? Do you feel that you're still a chance for the top 10 places, do you think?
Well, we've done 2 hours with 1 tank full, so we'll only have another 1 stop and then we'll go right through to the finish. And of course there'll be no tyre changes because of the weather, so I think we're in there with a fair chance of getting a reasonably good placing.
There's bike number 8, 5th outright, up until this fall for the Michael Cole Alan Decker bike. We saw Alan Decker take over just a little while ago from Michael Cole, a very smooth wet weather rider who'd got it up into that 5th place, but down he went. Only his early laps on the bike, the danger period. And poor Alan Decker, 27 years old, has fallen. As did, of course, Ron Haslam, as we see the Steve Trinder, bike number 18, 3rd outright, and leading the 750 class, come into the pits and probably hand over to the South African David Peterson.
Well, with me at the moment, Alan Decker, co-riding with Michael Cole, who were in 5th position. What's happened, Alan?
Trying to get used to the wet conditions, I've just locked up the brakes coming into Honda corner and fallen off. I thought I'd go faster sooner rather than sort of leading into it to go faster.
And you're definitely out of the race. There's been too much damage to the bike?
Yeah, it's really ripped all the front end.
Well, let's have a talk now about the circuit. Is it deteriorating at all, do you think, or is it still much the same as it was at the start?
I think it's about the same. There's there's a lot of areas on the track that were just problem areas to start with, and if you hit those problem areas, you're really in Skidgeville.
Well, yeah, it looks like you had an unfortunate ending to this year, and let's hope we see you back again next year.
No, you will. Thanks.
Here he comes, John Pace coming to the pits. Now, he's done all the work out there on the track. He's got himself with a nice security gap, so they should be able to do the race in only 2 pit stops. But let's see how quick the pit stop will be, because that will be all important now. If he's got it down to 2 pit stops, how quick can he get that pit stop done and get back out on the track with Neil Shivers at the helm? Shivers there, waving him in.
The bike's gone out, right?
Wet weather's on. Stopped. Pace giving Shivers some sort of warning as to what goes on. Frank Manage, the Pirelli man, checking the tyres. He's happy.
Jesus.
And John Pace stays on the motorcycle.
Neil.
16 seconds he had on that pit stop. He refused to hand it over to Neil Shivers. And John Pace, running hot, has gone back out into the Castrol 6 Hour. 2 hours, 15 minutes he's been on the bike, and he wants another 2 hours 15. This will be a superhuman effort.
With me at the moment, Neil Shivers. Well, John Pace has taken the Suzuki into second place and he's riding very, very well. Neil, what's the decision? You have decided to let him go on?
That's right, Bob. John's riding such a fine race at the moment and he's handling the wet weather very well. He's got himself in the groove in the rain. I feel it'd be silly for me to try and there's no one person dominates. It's a team effort, and while John's doing a better effort than I'll be able to do, I feel it's better if he stayed out there and keeps going.
You don't favour the wet weather?
No, I do not favour the wet weather, especially against someone like John who's very skillful. It's a team effort. He's probably going a second or 2 seconds left faster than what I'd be able to do. So I asked him how's he going as far as being cold and starting to freeze up. He said he was all right, so he's still in there.
And what's the decision going to be now? Is he going to ride out the full 4 hours that he's allowed?
Yeah, we'll leave him out there till exactly 4 hours, which is the time limit available for each rider, and then I'll finish the last 2 hours.
And hopefully it won't be raining too hard when you go out.
Yeah, that's right. A bit of luck it might find up to me.
John Pace is out there. Whether Neil Shivers is correct has yet to be seen, because Ron Haslam's come down, Alan Decker's come down, both in the opening lap, so certainly Shivers' decision from that viewpoint was correct. But can John Pace maintain the pace for another 2 hours? Michael Cole brings the Alan Decker damaged Honda CB1100R back to the pits. Their hope is that they'll repair the machine and get it back into the event, although by now there's so many laps down that really it's something of a futile effort.
It's very knocked about on the other side of the bike, on the tank, and a lot of the mechanicals cannot go the wrong way down pit lane. Here's an argument, and
like of the course, Len Main is telling him no way.
So he has to circle. He's wasting so much time, and you can see that, well, you can see the back of Len Main. You can see the damage there now to the aluminium tank. Now they're preferring to have a punch-up rather than to ride round the back of the pits. But Michael Cole, the man who spent 4 odd minutes sitting in the saddle of a CBX Honda a couple of years ago when they couldn't get the rear wheel in, is now in further distressing problems.
You watch the aggressions come out. Michael Cole's tried so hard. He's being warned again by Len Main, don't take it down there. And Cole just wants to be belligerent. He's got to get rid of all his frustrations. So he parks it and leaves it and said, Len Main, you move it. I don't want to know.
31-year-old Alan Hales won this race last year and was so confident this year it was unbelievable. He felt that he and Suzuki could not lose, and David Hiscock, the New Zealander, shared that confidence. When he got on the bike at the start of this riding stint, Hiscock had fallen from 3rd, and when Hales came out they were in 13th place. Hales now has picked up 10 positions, is lying 3rd outright, and has recently overtaken the 750 Suzuki of Stephen Trinder, number 18. That moved him up to 3rd. The next man he has to aim for is John Pace on bike number 1, and we'll have the number of laps between those two for you shortly, and a lap time also on Alan Hales, who's done so well in his riding stint.
The magic of Alan Hales, he's exactly 3 laps behind the leader, Wayne Gardner, at this stage. Gardner's on 129 laps, Hales is on 126, and in between them is John Pace on 127 laps, so he's 1 lap behind, 3rd position. And his lap time, a 70.6 seconds. So he's certainly quite slow in these raining conditions. The rain's pouring down at Amaroo again. The mist, as you see there, as he comes over the top, shades of Britain.
I think he's done the work that he can do in terms of picking up placings, because he is not lapping certainly any faster than the leading pair of Gardner on 5 and Pace on 1. But of course every little bit of time that he can pick up can count later if things go wrong, if there's a fall, a muffed pit stop or whatever. And of course the contingency thing is that John Pace on 1 cannot do more than 4 hours, so he's got to come in at least sort of a minute short of the 4 hours, and Chivers therefore has got to repeat the excellent job that Pace did of getting more than 2 hours out of a tank full on bike 1.
Hales is trying on every straight to get the maximum power down, but look what happens even on the straights.
Another interesting point on these Suzukis is wire wheels instead of alloy, which most of the other bikes are fitted with.
There it goes. Look at that. That's on the straight. He's got the throttle crack wide open, and there's no way, even on the straight, that he can hold that throttle open.
Out of Honda corner comes the race leader, Wayne Gardner, on 5. Underneath, Len Attlee on the Yamaha. Look at him get into a moment here. Trailing the boot there as he straightens up. The only Honda still running in the top 10.
And there he goes. That's the man on whom Honda's hopes now totally rest. Honda have spent a mint entering this Castrol 6-hour motorcycle production classic. They've developed the CB 1100R for the race, and at the moment only Wayne Gardner on the privately entered Honda is in the top 10. Behind him are 5 Suzukis in a row. Then comes a Kawasaki, a Yamaha, another Suzuki and a Kawasaki. The Works Honda effort at this stage is failing, and may I say failing fairly miserably in these conditions. But Wayne Gardner, the young boy from Wollongong, is the man on whom all of Honda's hopes now rest, and he just had a moment. Better through the corner that time. That's the corner on which he almost had his lose the time before. His left ankle must be hurting him now because he really twisted it backwards as he tried to save the bike from coming down there. Gardner has been on the motorcycle since the start of this race, and it is now 2.5 hours into the event.
With me at the moment, Peter Malloy, the team manager of the leading bike of Andrew Johnson and Wayne Gardner. Peter, you must be feeling very pleased with yourself, considering the amount of money that Team Honda have put into this race, and yet you're the leading Honda, the only Honda, in fact, in the top 10.
Yes, we're extremely pleased. I'll give all the credit to young Wayne Gardner, who is absolutely magic. He's probably the most underrated rider in Australia. He does it in the dry, he does it in the wet, it doesn't matter. And I asked the guy, could he go and do 2 stints straight? He said, why not?
And the plan, though, my goodness, that bike is going hard and sliding all over the place. And frankly, how they can stay on it defeats me. But Pace's plan is to stay on the bike for 4 hours. Let's have a look at this. Just watch this bike working and the rider controlling it.
Fourth outright in the Castrol 6-hour race, South African champion Dave Peterson on the Suzuki GS 750, which makes him the leader of the 750cc class. Peterson won the South African championship only last weekend at Kyalami near Johannesburg, and he is South Africa's next chance in the Grand Prix season. He's applied next year to be qualified to ride in all the Grand Prix races on a 500cc machine, which he's negotiating with Suzuki at this stage. Peterson rides regularly in the rain in South Africa. As a matter of fact, he said that most of the South African production championships were held in rain this year, yet he loathes and detests the wet weather, which is why he let his co-rider, Australian 500cc champion, Steve Trinder, go out in the first session. But Peterson's now on the bike using a lot of body English, more so than many of the other competitors in the event, and there he is coming up now on the tail of Wayne Gardner, the outright leader in the event.
Haslam there sliding the bike round, as we saw Wayne Gardner doing a while ago, and Pace and Alan Hales. And the daring and the skill, the finesse, the smoothness of these men is something to behold, because trying to break this big bike from something well over 100 miles an hour round to probably 170 kilometres an hour, would have been 190 in the dry at the top of the hill, get back to third gear to go through the loop. There's the Suzuki that came down in that accident, the #1 rider, as we can see. You can't tell from looking at it there whether it's a 750 or an 1100 Suzuki, but it's an 1100, the Cox Campbell bike, that was lying in 15 was lying 6th place outright. So what bad luck for the number 1 rider, Rodney Cox, slightly slower on the bike than Malcolm Campbell, who slotted it in so well. This is the box easy bike. And back to the pits. Tremendous record among all the riders. Front runners and the tail enders in the early part of the race, but now as they get a little bit more nonchalant with the rain, as you can see there from Haslam, as they get a little bit more nonchalant, they're treating it with a little bit more disdain and occasionally lapsing concentration. Now the accidents and the mistakes are starting to happen.
Haslam a 68.2 second lap on that previous lap, so he's certainly not mucking about at all. You can see the spray coming off the back of the tyre there. Still, the riders can't establish a groove in which to ride.
Between the two cameras there is a big patch of brand new black bitumen that gives very different adhesion right from the exit line of the corner to that of the rest of the track, just as they're getting right out to the red and white curbing. It's a very tricky section.
Haslam's bike very twitchy, in fact, as you can see. Perhaps the chassis was damaged in the crash that he had earlier, because the bike certainly isn't tracking very well at all. So to do a 68-second lap is certainly a credit to Rocket Run on a bike that must be considered suspect at this stage.
No sign that the weather will lift before the end of the 6 hour, with the riders coming up in 9 minutes time, in fact a few seconds, 8 minutes time, to half distance, 3 hours of this tortuous 11th Castrol 6 hour.
And there's Ron Haslam. Just watch this bike as he recovers from the bump. Look at the front forks react. That steering head is badly damaged from the crash that he had earlier when he first took over the motorcycle. Look at that.
The bike stepping out, Haslam correcting, and in fact the Hondas were wearing their front mudguard. Through fork flexing, the front mudguard is very snug on the tyre and they're getting sufficient front fork flexing. All the other bikes do too, but because the mudguard on the Honda is more snug on the tyre, they were actually wearing a couple of parts of the mudguard yesterday at high speed.
Behind the big BMW, Gardner pokes his head out, again screws the big Honda wide open down that short straight, and then onto the brakes and into Winfield corner, the slowest corner on the circuit and possibly almost the most dangerous. And there's his co-rider, Andrew Johnson, the current Australian Unlimited champion, waiting to go out. My goodness, he's into the pits. So it's Wayne Gardner coming into the pits now to hand the bike over to Andrew Johnson. Now Gardner's been on this bike for 3 hours. He can stay on it for 4, so he may elect not to hand over to Johnson, but somehow I don't think so.
That has been a heroic ride, Wayne Gardner. A brilliant ride.
Peter Malloy, team manager, takes him, pulls him to one side. He's now briefing Andrew Johnson as to what the conditions are like out there. One word would probably suffice.
He has built up a lead of 2 laps and 30 seconds, 2.5 laps over the next bike. A brilliant bit of riding by Wayne Gardner. Andrew Johnson.
16.5 seconds at pit stop, extremely fast, extremely professional, and Andrew Johnson has been given the motorcycle to do his very best.
And one thing you can be sure of, that Peter Malloy has drilled into Andrew Johnson. Just settle in and find out before you go mad.
Peter Malloy has told you you're a genius and he loves you very much, Wayne. You've put in a magnificent stint out there, 3 hours. You did have the option for going for 4 hours. You went, decided to keep an hour up your sleeve.
Yeah, that's right. It's really tiring. That's why I had to pull in, I think. I think I've done a little bit too much and I'm starting to slow down a little bit now. So I think it is a good thing that I pulled in.
Where's the difficult part of the circuit? I heard you giving Andrew some advice there.
It's very slippery in Honda. If you go on the outside, once I went on the outside to overtake a person and really put me on me bum. But if you keep right on the inside, it's not too bad. Going over the top too, over the top of the hill, if you go too wide, you end up way out in the sticks and out in the dirt. So you got to keep it tight there too.
Wayne Gardner, a very tired boy at the moment. He's got apparently an hour and a half to go left before he finishes his stint in the Castrol 6 Hour, and there's still well and truly the lead bike.
And Andrew Johnson now on the lead Honda CB1100R. Johnson going to feel out the circuit now.
Johnson, full wet weather gear over his leathers, and he knows well, this 23-year-old who recently had a baby boy, or his wife did, their first child, and that's David Hiscock out on the Alan Hales bike, and cold and tiredness starting to tell as riders. In fact, the bikes can go further than the riders.
Hales, in fact, has done just over 2 hours in that stint of his on the motorcycle. So again, good fuel consumption from the Suzukis, which augurs well. It means only 1 pit stop more for this Suzuki that Dave Hiscock is on. And there's Alan Hales, exhausted after his run.
The lead, first bike now after the pit stop, 1 lap and 48 seconds.
Dave Hiscock there on bike 6, passes a slower rider, feeling out the track.
The gloves, and Wayne's trembling so much he can't.
The conditions have certainly changed since he was last out there. And there's Dennis Neal sneaking underneath him, challenging. Dave Hiscock won't object because at this stage he wants to know a little more about the track conditions itself. As he settles in there, you saw his left leg going out just to make his leathers fit him a little bit better. He certainly won't at this stage undertake any heroics.
Into the pits comes bike number 9, the South African pair of Rod Gray and David Wally on the Gus Lou Motorcycles Honda 1100. Their other team bike, number 34, went adrift earlier when Terry Turner, David Burley came off. But it's the very solid frame of Rod Gray getting onto the bike, taking over from Wally, and motoring out onto the circuit now. They're very used to this type of production racing. They have a very similar format to it in South Africa, but it's not commonly used in Europe, and it's why so many of the European riders have had a bit of trouble, as you see him there, just stretching the knees of his leathers to get himself comfortable, because in fact the Honda 1100 has very high foot pegs and the knees are very much folded up, much more than on the Suzukis. Here we have Graham Muir, in fact, in the saddle at the moment, the 25-year-old Victorian, whose wife Linda normally comes to the racing with him and likes to do so, but on this occasion, because of the week up here, they just couldn't afford it, and Linda's home watching the telecast probably at this stage. He rides for Jeff Taylor Motorcycles, the Australian, many times Australian sidecar champion, who owns the Yamaha TZ750, which he'll be riding in the Swan Series shortly. And Muir does a great job, but with very little money behind him.
Dennis Neal also, I noticed, who is out of the track at the moment.
Slipped back a place at this stage, but still so much of this race to go, with 3 1/4 hours of it gone, but 2 3/4 hours still to come, and the situation changing dramatically. At one stage, only Wayne Gardner, as we watch the Jim Budd Paul Cawthorne bike in the pits. Cawthorne off, the number 2 rider, Budd onto it. This is the Kawasaki 750 that he's holding 9th place outright, and 3rd in the 750 class, fires up and away. Top of the hill, and it's Graham Muir. His boot there, just feeling for the track to give him an idea of how far over he's got it. Bike number 4, Dennis Neal.
Dennis Neal was due to have been in 2 laps' time. He's just come in now, and what is somewhat of an unscheduled stop. He's getting off the motorcycle. Roger Hayes getting on it.
Under 2 hours. He's done 2 hours precisely.
20 seconds to stop. She's going to be a long one. Hayes has got it started. They're all doing the rear suspension.
Don't worry about it. It's all right. Leave it.
Dennis Neal says don't worry about it. Dennis,
Bike's handling good, leave it alone.
What's wrong with the rear suspension, Dennis?
Nothing. The bike's handling spot on. The only problem I'm having is I can't see where I'm damn well going.
Really, the visor's that bad?
Oh, it's terrible.
What are the conditions like out there?
Well, you know, you've got to be careful, but if I could see where I was going, I reckon I'd knock a couple more seconds off it. It keeps fogging up, and I'm wearing old gloves and they've got grease on them. That's the worst thing I did was when I wiped it, it smeared the whole setup.
Are you getting much help from the slower riders? Are they keeping out of your way?
Yeah, they're doing a good job. Everyone's having a look. It's pretty good.
Dennis, you're in 6th place at this moment. You're several laps behind. Is there any hope of you winning the Castrol 6 Hour?
Well, only if the other guys are unlucky enough to fall off, I think. I hope Roger can go a little bit faster this time. I was making steady ground, but we'll only win through their misfortune, I think.
So, Roger Hayes back in the saddle, the man who in the dry was off the pace, both of his lead rider, Dennis Neal, but also of a number of the co-riders in some of the other stronger teams, people like David Hiscock and the Andrew Johnson-Wayne Gardner combination, people like that. Hayes, though, knows now that he has got to get serious. He's got to whittle his times down, and that's a pressure situation for him. He won the race in 76 and 8, co-riding with Jim Budd. Very nearly a fall there, and bike number 2 for Ron Haslam. Very crossed up as he came out of the stop corner, Winfield, and nearly a fall again as he follows, or tries to follow, David Hiscock on 6. Have a look at it. Almost high-siding him, starting to do so, but he brought it under control beautifully. Here he is, and he's gone under Hiscock nevertheless. By next weekend, irrespective of what happens today, Haslam will be at Brands Hatch in England, practicing for a race there. In fact, he'll be there on Wednesday. And I might say, in his week here, he's gained an enormous amount of respect for the people that race production motorcycles in Australia, because he realises just how professional the scene is here in production bike racing, and what a damn good job the top riders do. As he said, there's 15 at least of them who are really quick. Same corner again. What's he do this time? Under control. Straight. Watch the bike work. Have a look at that in slow motion and just realise how much they move about. A slide there, a slide again. Another big one. And look how close he is to the fence as he corrects the 4th one in the one corner.
Barry Simmons is team manager of the Honda UK entry, the Ron Haslam bike. Barry, you claim that Haslam may have been brought down in his earlier crash because of the direction of the scrutineers.
Yes, I wouldn't blame them for what they've done, but we had to put our front suspension back to a mark which is given as a guide to setting up the suspension. It's not listed as a definite fixing point, and I did take this to the ACU stewards, and they agreed with the series scrutineers that we had to put our forks back, which meant that we'd done all our testing up until that point with our own settings, and we had to more or less start cold in the race with the suspension as it's sitting now. And as you'll probably notice from the television pictures, Ron is wobbling about all over the place.
Is it your contention that the scrutineers were wrong?
Well, I'm not sufficiently versed in production racing regulations as they have them here to make a point of that. It's definitely upset the handling of the machine, which is obviously my main concern. Whether they were right in their actions, well, only they can say. Of course, the ACU will back them up, and I can't argue with that.
I'm standing with Neil Shivers right now, a very worried Neil Shivers. He has to take over from John Pace, who's doing that fantastic job out there, pulling in 2.5 seconds a lap on Andrew Johnson. Neil, can you emulate John Pace?
John Pace is doing a fine effort, a damn fine effort. If I can sort of get out there and try and do the same job that he's doing, I'd be very happy, but I don't consider myself very good in the wet. I've got a record of keeping it upright, but the pace might not be there for myself. But in this sort of pressure and the way this race is going, I'm going to have to pull out wherever I can, I know that.
Well, is it a case of win or crash at this stage, or are you satisfied with second place?
I'm never satisfied with second place. You either win or you lose, but I'm going to try as hard as I can, but I'm certainly not going to put it down the road if I can help it.
There's the race situation at 200 laps, approximately 2/3 race distance, about 12 minutes in fact to the 4-hour mark, with the race leader Andrew Johnson, the 23-year-old Victorian, in command on the 1100 Honda number 5. But he has got an enormous amount of pressure. His lead chiseled from 36 seconds to 32 to 27.3, and now static for the last 3 laps around the 25.5 second mark as John Pace on bike number 1, Suzuki GSX 1100, puts the pressure on him as he readies himself to come in and to hand over to his co-rider Neil Chivers. Further back you can see Hales third, but some laps down to them on another of the Suzuki's number 6. Fourth place is Honda 750, the Trinder Jeff Miller bike, Suzuki 750. Fifth place, bike number 10, and we see incidentally that the gap has come down another second odd. 24.2 seconds now is the minute advantage after 3 3/4 hours of racing that team on bike 5 holds over second place. Then on bike 10, in fifth place, Rob Phyllis Graham Muir, that's another of the Suzuki 1100s. Behind them, the Dennis Neal Roger Hayes Honda number 4. 17 then is the 750 class Rodney Brown Len Willing Kawasaki. Number 9 follows David Woolley, South African, and Rod Gray, his fellow countryman, being team managed by Roy Dennison, former racer on a Honda 1100.
Going to do 2 hours now. Dave's not handling the wet weather too well. We're in a reasonable spot now, but we'll just hope for the best and do what we can. You've abandoned your visor, I noticed that. Do the goggles give you any more vision? I'll tell you at 4 o'clock. I can't see with the visor, so I'm just hoping that I can see with this one. The vision's really bad out there. It's terrible. I can knock a second off my lap times if I can see where I'm going, so we're hoping this will do the trick.
At the moment, running in third place, the Suzuki GSX 1100, with the winner of last year's Castrol, Alan Hales, about to go out.
The bike, Hales gets on. A lot of activity around the rear end. Having a look at the tyre. The fuel going in. They're using a special snorkel on the fuel to try and stop an airlock in the fuel tank, thus getting an extra 2 litres of petrol into the bike, which should get it to the finish without another stop. Dave Hiscock, what are the conditions like out there? Dave, what are the conditions like?
Not very good at all, I see that.
You were fairly detuned in that session. You don't like the rain at all?
I don't mind the rain. We just want to stay on, that's all.
Were you disappointed to be brought in after only 1 hour?
No, that was our plan to be brought in. Now, I wasn't brought in. That was our plan to be brought in.
Dave Hiscock, thank you.
Alan's faster, so he should stay out the longest.
Well, this is a grimly determined effort by Alan Hales. I've never seen a person approach a motor race so confidently as Alan Hales. And that's got his mind into such a state of tune that it's amazing that, frankly, he can even work with the fact that after 4 hours, they're not in the lead. But they're in a position to threaten, and by gee, Alan Hales, for the next 120 minutes, is going to do it.
Dennis Neal, the rider who went out in approximately 14th or 15th position when he took his turn on the bike. He's done a tremendous job because he's lifted them right back up into contention. At the moment, they're lying in 6th position.
Dennis Neal and Roger Hayes in the pits. Roger Hayes gets off the bike. He's been about a second and a half a lap slower than has Dennis Neal, so he's been brought off the bike, and Neal will do the last 2. A fast pit stop, only 10 seconds. Roger, what's it like out there?
It's better than this morning anyway. Don't seem to be as much oil out there.
Dennis Neal has been quicker than you consistently in the wet.
Yeah, that's true.
Why?
It's Dennis.
Yeah. Does it mean, in fact, that it's just so bad that you won't take a risk?
Oh, yes, but Dennis is, it's his day to day.
In what way?
Oh, well, he proved yesterday he's the fastest person in this country.
Well, there we see his co-rider, fiercely determined, Dennis Neal, and Roger Hayes there was referring to the fact that in 1974 he and Dennis Neal teamed together in their first attack on the Castrol 6R and came home 4th outright on a Kawasaki 900. This has been Dennis Neal that at that point of the circuit last year tangled with Ron Bolden. Bolden lodged a protest. Neal was black flagged by the officials, brought in, his riding queried. Then he protested against that action, rode under protest, and then on the last corner, on the last lap, coming onto the straight, lost concentration, touched the curbing with the rocker cover of the Honda 900 he was on that occasion, and fell off the bike, went holding second place on the road, despite all the argument. And of course there was no argument then to be resolved because he was a non-finisher. Number 10, the Rob Phillips Graham Muir bike from Victoria. I haven't seen the rider yet, but we'll soon. That's Graham Muir. Bad luck, 25-year-old Melburnian, and you can see from his dejected walk just what he thinks about that drop. Round the Dunlop loop goes Alan Hales in furious pursuit of anybody he can find, actually. He just wants to lap as fast as he can. He's got a desperate situation with the race leader, who is Andrew Johnson, of course, whom he's just unlapped himself once. He's got to do that another 3 times, but I can tell you something. But with 68 and a half minutes to go, one Alan Hales on bike number 6 will not stop till the flag comes out at 4 o'clock. He will keep trying, but on the other hand, Andrew Johnson knows that the sensible thing at this stage is to let him have his head.
And indeed a new side of Andrew Johnson seen in this race here today. He's been a scratcher all year. He's got on that big Yamaha with which he's won the Unlimited Championship, and he's been flat out, but here he's been a model of control. And here he comes into the pits. Andrew Johnson to hand over to Wayne Gardner.
With 55 minutes of the race remaining.